Okay, hello ladies and gentlemen, Forrest over here, and welcome back to another reading live stream. Today I'll be doing the penultimate part of the Five Nights at Freddy's reading stream, as we are almost to the end. For this part, I will be reading chapters 14 through 20. It's going to be fun doing that. But before we do that, I also want to go ahead and tally up the votes for what we got going on right now for the books that I've said that I'll be reading for the Halloween season. Each book will be read hopefully before the week is out for each of the 4 weeks. But for right now, if you guys also want to vote on which of these 4 books you want me to read, I do have a community post up for you guys to vote on that if you haven't already done so. With that said, before we begin reading this book, I'll go ahead and reveal the books that will be read, as well as what place they're in. I'm actually going from bottom to top, so yeah. So the 2 books, we have a tie for last place with 0 votes for each one, that being Fantastic Land and Psycho, which is kind of surprising to me because I figured Psycho would have had at least 1 vote by now, but, you know, I understand. Compared to these 2 other books, yeah, that's how it is. I get it. But also Fantastic Land, when you say a book is like a cross between Lord of the Flies and Battle Royale, that makes you wonder, you know what I mean? Also, hello Daniel Barry, how you doing tonight? But yeah, these books have no votes whatsoever, so if you want me to read either one of these books first, go to the community tab and vote for one of these 2 if you haven't already. In second place, with 1 vote, we have Peter Benchley's Jaws. This is the 50th anniversary of the book as well. I'm honestly not surprised that it would actually get. I'm not surprised it would get any votes because I figured it would, especially considering we just got through the summer season, and now we're in the autumn season. So people will probably be like, well, let's bring back some of the summer times. You know, why not? You know. And in first place, with 3 votes right now, Stephen King's Night Shift, a collection of, I believe it said 20 short stories in this book. Yeah, and I actually was going to originally do a poll to have you guys determine which movie of the 5 that I've handpicked for to represent the book. But I've actually thought I might watch Children of the Corn for this, because for starters, that was the only reason why I bought the book. And number 2, because the movie is celebrating 40 years since it came out this year. So why not? You know what I'm saying? Why not celebrate that? So yeah. With that being said, I will officially start reading Five Nights at Freddy's, chapters 14 through 20. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and put this. I can't get it closer, but whatever. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Also, as usual, I do have a glass of tea here. I also got a thing of pop over here as well. It's like this. I kid you not. It's literally that big. It is literally, no question, it is literally 1.25 liters of a bottle in a pop right here. And the funny part is, you could get at the Dollar General that I got this at, you could get it on DoorDash for $1.85 at the Dollar General I got it at. That's crazy. $1.85 for 1.25 liter of bottle of Coke. That is absolutely crazy. Especially when you consider the fact that the 20 fluid ounce bottle is more than that. That's insane. That's crazy. But anyway, without further ado, let's begin. Officially, let's begin. Chapter 14. Abby tried to concentrate on her drawing, but she was distracted. Her gaze kept drifting up from her pad. Her attention was drawn to the drawer that held the Freddy's badge. Abby turned and looked down the hall, toward her brother's room. His door was open, and she could hear a woman's voice. Faint. Just a murmur. Abby couldn't make out the woman's words. It sounded like Mike was on his computer. Abby turned toward the drawer. Abandoning her artwork, she stood. She stepped over to the drawer and looked down at it. Okay, so maybe the badge was pretty cool. Just because her stupid brother had tried to give it to her to make up for being mean the night before didn't mean the badge wasn't worth having. Abby grabbed the drawer handle and pulled. The drawer didn't open. She tried again, but the drawer was jammed. That wasn't something new. Most of the kitchen drawers got stuck regularly. Usually if you just jiggled them. Abby tried that. She pulled again. Nope. The drawer was shut tight. Abby turned and braced herself against the side of the counter. She thought that might give her something to push off of so she could pull with more oomph. She grabbed the handle and tried again. The news reporter on Mike's laptop screen was stepping into a lobby that was both the same and totally different than the one Mike knew. The floor was the friendly old black and white checkerboard. The walls were red and white striped. Freddy's posters. Red vinyl benches. Beyond these touchstones, however, the lobby was very different. For one thing, it was bright, lit up with brilliant white light, and it was crowded. The blonde reporter stepped in front of a cluster of uniformed crash. At first, caught up in the video, Mike thought the sound had come from his screen. He quickly realized, though, that the racket wasn't recorded. It was real. What the hell was that? He asked aloud. Immediately, an answer put him in motion. Abby, he thought. Mike quickly set aside his laptop. He jumped up and ran out of his room. It took Mike only seconds to trot down the hallway. In those seconds, his mind suggested a number of possible catastrophes. He ignored the images and burst into the kitchen. There, he stopped and looked at the floor. The first thing Mike saw on the floor was the upside-down junk drawer. It lay at an angle against a battered old flashlight. Around the drawer, an explosion of miscellaneous items. Old pens, tacks, scraps of paper, a half-empty spool of thread, a pair of scissors, a couple of business cards, several takeout menus, a purple-haired troll, and the fake Freddy security badge was scattered across the kitchen's faded green linoleum. Abby was standing over the mess. Mike opened his mouth to yell at her about being careful, but when he saw the look on her face and what she held in her hands, his words dissolved in his head. Oh man, Mike thought. Missing its cover page, the thick stapled packet of paper that Abby clutched was the custody proposal Jane had given Mike. Clearly, given the crumpled, devastated expression on Abby's face, she had read the custody summons header. He'd never seen her look so hurt. Why didn't I stash that in my room, my bedroom? Mike asked himself. Stupid! I made a mess, Abby said. Sorry. It's okay, Mike said. The mess was beside the point. How is he supposed to handle this? I'm not mad, Mike said. He held out a hand. Can I have that? Abby hesitated, then she held out the packet of paper. Mike took the papers, wanted so very badly to beat himself over the head with them. Look, Mike said. They're just papers. They don't mean anything. Abby wrinkled her nose. She wasn't falling for that. Then why do you have them? She asked. It's complicated, Mike said. Hold on, let me fix my camera. There you go, that's better. I prefer to be in the middle when I'm reading these, so that way it don't sound like, so I don't look like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway. Abby gave him a, "Oh, come on," look. Mike tried again. "Your Aunt Jane." "I hate her!" Abby erupted. She stomped her foot and crunched one of the old pens lying next to the crashed drawer. "She smells like cigarettes." Abby made a something stinks face. "And she's mean," she added. In spite of the seriousness of the situation, Mike couldn't help himself. He cracked a smile. Abby stomped her foot again. This time her heel narrowly missed the poor troll. "Stop smiling," Abby commanded. "It's not funny." Mike kept smiling. "I know," he said. "It's just nice that there's something we can finally agree on." He was trying to lighten the mood, but Abby wasn't having it. "You're gonna give me away?" Abby asked. Her voice was small, forlorn. How do I answer that? Mike asked himself. How could he explain the complexities of the situation to a 10-year-old? 3 sharp raps on his front door saved Mike from dealing with the issue. Attempting to hide his relief, Mike turned and strode toward the door. He pulled it back, and his mouth gaped even farther open than the door. Vanessa? Mike wouldn't have been more surprised if he'd found the news reporter with the 80s hair on his front porch. An avalanche of questions rushed through Mike's head. What was Vanessa doing here? How did she even know where he lived? Was this official business? Was he in some kind of trouble? Mike looked past Vanessa, who was in full uniform, and eyed her black and white cruiser, which was parked in the street beyond his rolling heap. His poor car looked like it was trying to sink down into the gravel drive, humiliated by the comparison of its junkyard appearance next to the cruiser's sleek, shiny paint and chrome. Hey, Mike, Vanessa said lightly. It was the friendly Vanessa speaking. She didn't sound official at all. Mike couldn't get his tongue to work. Vanessa didn't seem to mind. She looked past Mike's shoulder, and her eyes widened in obvious surprise. And hello? Mike glanced back and watched his sister tiptoe forward. He returned his attention to Vanessa and pulled the door farther open. Come in? He asked. Vanessa hesitated, but then stepped through the doorway. She didn't come all the way in, though. She stood in the doorway, blocking it, so he couldn't close the door. He shrugged. It was warm outside. Mike felt Abby come up behind him. He looked down and watched her lean out around him to eye Vanessa. Mike engaged his tongue. Vanessa, he said, this is Abby. Abby, Vanessa. Hello, Abby, Vanessa said, smiling. Mike thought the smile looked a little strained. Mike didn't tell me he had a daughter, Vanessa said. Abby made a stink face. Gross! She's my sister, Mike explained. Vanessa's smile relaxed into something more genuine. Oh, well, he didn't tell me he had a sister either. Vanessa pointed at Abby. Love your overalls, she said. She gave Abby a thumbs up. Are you here to arrest Mike? Abby asked. Vanessa put her hands down her utility belt. She pulled her brows together in a stern frown. Why? She asked. What did he do? Abby stepped down from behind the mic. She sighed dramatically and threw out her hands. Where do I start? Mike watched Vanessa pull her lips together to suppress a smile. Hey, Abby, Mike said to his sister. Why don't you go play in your room? I'm going to talk to Vanessa and then we can clean up that mess in the kitchen. Abby looked from Mike to Vanessa and back again to Mike. Shrugging, she said, Okay. Mike felt like he'd been beamed into another universe. Abby was going to cooperate? Abby rocked up on her tiptoes and gave Vanessa a polite smile. Nice to meet you. She turned and skipped down the hall. You too, Vanessa called. They'd be like, You too! Vanessa called. Vanessa and Mike both watched Abby go. When she disappeared into her room, they looked at each other. Then they both spoke at once. "What are you doing here?" Mike asked. "Somebody broke into Freddy's," Vanessa said. "Say what?" Mike thought. Vanessa's question won. "Seriously?" Mike said. "What happened?" Vanessa shook her head in disgust. Mike noticed that the sunlight made streaks in her hair that flashed like sunlight streamers. "From the looks of the place," Vanessa said, "World War III." Mike couldn't process that. He was distracted by the light show in Vanessa's stuck, twisted hair. We got a call," Vanessa said. "Apparently someone drove by and saw that the front door was open." Starting at the word "apparently," Vanessa's voice took on a different tone. Gone was the light and friendly. Her words became clipped and severe. Mike glanced up at Vanessa's face. Her lips looked like they weren't even capable of smiling. They were carved of stone and threatened to crack as she went on. "It doesn't look like anything was taken, but whoever was there sure had their fun." She was back in full-on cop mode, Mike realized. Her eyes were narrowed and she was inspecting him like he was a criminal suspect. He was half tempted to ask if he needed a lawyer. Mike's shoulders stiffened. He clenched his teeth and groaned out. "Well, those cameras are everywhere. They must have recorded something." "They did," Vanessa. Hold on. Sorry about that. Family member was coming in. "They did." Vanessa crossed her arms. "They captured 8 hours and 42 minutes of static." She lifted her brow and looked at Mike questioningly. "No doubt about it. Mike was a suspect. She was interrogating him." Mike had been joking around with himself when he thought about asking for a lawyer, but now he realized this wasn't a joking matter. Even so, it was laughable. And annoying. Mike was tired of being accused of being a... Whoa, what the hell happened to the... I just noticed the camera was like, looking like right up here, like, whoa. Anyway. "Right," Mike snapped. "Okay. Just so we're clear, you're suggesting I had something to do with it?" Vanessa fingered her baton. "Give me a break," Mike thought. "Are you saying you didn't?" Vanessa asked. Mike lost his temper. "Of course I didn't!" he shouted. Vanessa pulled her chin in and raised both eyebrows. She lifted a hand that wasn't caressing her police baton. She held out the hand, palm up. Mike looked down and saw his prescription pill bottle. It was empty. "Recognize this?" Vanessa asked. An engine revved in the street. Mike glanced past Vanessa and saw his neighbor's shiny new red SUV rolling past. Great. The news of his arrest would be passed all through the neighborhood. No doubt Jane would get wind of it. Hell, she probably already knew. Mike, who had been working up a head of steam that had heated up his cheeks, felt the blood drain away. He was sure he was probably "look at me, I'm guilty" pale. He swallowed and tried to work up enough saliva to speak. When he finally did, he started out his response. It, it, it's not what you think," he said, sounding like it was exactly what she thought. Vanessa gave him a disbelieving look. He couldn't blame her for it. Mike tried again. "They're sleeping pills," he said. "I take them to sleep." He knew that wasn't exactly a stellar proclamation of righteous innocence. A night guard who took sleeping pills on the job wasn't a pillar of virtue. "I know what they are, Mike," Vanessa said. "It's written right on the bottle." She didn't say duh, but her tone got the sentiment across. Mike couldn't come up with anything to say. He was busted, and he knew it. His shoulders slumped and he hung his head. But then he felt a stirring of annoyance in his belly. Okay, so he'd been sleeping, but nothing had happened while he slept. The place had been fine when he left it. How was the break-in his fault? That thought gave Mike words. It wasn't my fault, he said. Vanessa snorted. Newsflash, if you're too whacked out to remember to lock the dang door when you leave your shift, accident or not, you're liable. It's called criminal negligence. You were there too, Vanessa bristled. You were there too, Mike said. That's a lot of Yes, it is. But we're not focusing on them right now. We're focusing, after this book, we're focusing on these. And these four specifically for October. As I said earlier, real quick, I'm going to say this again real quick. As I said earlier before I started reading, I'm doing a community poll for you, if anybody wants to partake in that. Well, you guys get to choose of the 4 books that I get to read. That I was just looking at what Based said. Also, how you doing tonight, Based? How you doing? But yeah, we're doing the 4 books. We got Stephen King's Night Shift, Peter Benchley's Jaws, Robert Bloch's Psycho, and what was the last one? Mike Bachhoven's Fantastic Land. Those are the 4 books I'll be reading for the month of October. 1 for each week. Also, on top of that, I'll be watching movies. I was originally thinking about doing 4 movies, but then I found a treasure trove of horror movies that are enough that I could probably do it if I wanted to. I could do a thing where I could watch these horror movies for each day of the month. That close. But there may be days where I'll have to see how many movies I got here again, just to be sure. But from my recollection, I have between 20 to 20, like somewhere between 20 to 30 horror movies down here right next to me. We'll see what happens with that one. Also, I am doing pretty well though. Thank you for asking. I'm glad to hear you're doing well as well. On top of that. Vanessa bristled. I left the building before you did, and it's your job to lock up. Mike frowned. But I was sure I did. He winced at the whine in his tone. Vanessa sighed. Her face softened, just a little. Maybe the wine had made her feel sorry for him. The top side of Vanessa retreated a bit. Her hand dropped away from her baton. Her lips were no longer granite-like. She even reached out and put a hand tightly on Mike's forearm. Maybe she was on his side after all. Excuse me. When Vanessa spoke, her voice was gentle. Mike, what the hell were you thinking? You're a security guard. Literally, your entire job description is, do not go to sleep. If anything, he should probably take those sleeping pills before he goes to work, so that way he'd be fully awake. The only problem with that reasoning, though, is Abby. Yeah, she would most likely be in her room drawing, doing her art, yeah. But at the same time, who knows what she might do outside of that, if she even thinks about doing something outside of that. Anyway, Mike looked at the warped wood floor in front of his door. He really needed to take better care of this place. But when? And with what money? Mike was distracting himself. He sighed and looked up at Vanessa. You wouldn't understand, he said. Vanessa pulled back her hand. So help me understand, she said. Explain it. Because the second I file a report, the whole thing will be out of my hands. Mike glanced down the hall toward Abby's room. He looked back at Vanessa. How should he handle this? Could he trust Vanessa with his story? Vanessa watched Mike steadily as he vacillated. He probably didn't have much more time before. Hey, Mike said, deciding. You want to walk with me? Vanessa looked startled. Then she frowned and looked down the hall. Your sister? Mike pointed out through his front door. Vanessa turned and looked toward the large concrete V that stretched away from Mike's house, from the opposite of the street. It was a storm water runoff. Hey, Izumi, how you doing tonight? We'll only go that far, Mike said. I'll be able to see the house from there. Vanessa hesitated. Then she nodded. Sure. Great reading. Thank you, I appreciate that. Good. How about you? Also, good to hear you're doing good, and I'm doing pretty well myself. Thank you for asking. Mike followed Vanessa out of his house. He closed and locked the door, then he led her down his driveway and across the street. Crossing a strip of gravel, he offered Vanessa a hand and he helped her up a grassy embankment that ran along the narrow concrete storm drain. The trough was filled with a brown, sludgy stream of water. Not exactly Venice, Mike thought. Sometimes I sit over here, Mike said, gesturing at the green slope. Game? He asked. Vanessa looked at the scruffy grass. In spite of the recent rain, the tufts of green weren't wet. The sun had dried them out. Sure. Vanessa lowered herself to the ground, adjusting her utility belt with a snappy creak. They sat together in silence for a couple of minutes. Then the sun settled on the back of their shoulders. Mike thought it felt like a warm blanket. The water in the storm drain trickled past. In spite of its constant motion, it had a stagnant pond odor. Maybe not the best spot for a heart-to-heart talk, Mike thought. But then, what did he know about a heart-to-heart talk? It wasn't like he'd had a lot of them. Mike cleared his throat. You might as well go for it. I used to... Man, that voice crack. I used to have a brother, Mike said. His name was Garrett. Mike glanced at Vanessa. She was just a couple feet from him, close enough for him to enjoy that vanilla apple flower scent he'd noticed before. She sat with her knees drawn up, her arms wrapped around her legs. She was at an angle, half facing the view and half facing Mike. Her gaze was steady and focused only on Mike. He squirmed a little, but he kept going. When I was 12, Mike said, a little older than Abby is now, Garrett got taken. Kidnapped. Vanessa made a little sympathetic sound in the back of her throat, but she didn't speak. She just waited. I was there when it happened, Mike went on. I saw the car drive away. But the driver, the license plate, I couldn't tell the police anything useful, so they never found the guy who did it. The guilt and helplessness that Mike felt then and had carried with him ever since slapped him like an actual blow to the face. He rubbed his jaw and managed to say, his voice breaking, They never found my brother. Vanessa still didn't say anything. Mike forced himself to go on. So there's this theory, he hesitated, trying to figure out how to explain it. It's psychology, I guess. Maybe neurology. Whatever. It's a theory that we never forget things. Even when we think we've forgotten, we haven't. Vanessa frowned, obviously not tracking. Mike needed to do a better job of explaining things. Basically, Mike said, the theory says that all the events that we've experienced, everything we've seen, all of it, even down to the tiniest detail, are stored somewhere in our brain. In our, what do you call them? Our neural pathways. Like the brain's highways. The stuff might seem as if it's lost, but it's not. It's just buried. No memory is actually gone. Memories are always retrievable. You just have to know where to look. Vanessa nodded. She seemed to be getting it. You're talking about witnessing something. We deal with that all the time in law enforcement. Trauma buries stuff. Exactly, Mike said. Vanessa nodded again. So your brother, you think you saw the person who took him? Mike shifted to face Vanessa. I know I did, he said. And I know the creep is in here. Mike tapped his head. Buried somewhere. Vanessa nodded again, this time more emphatically. Mike hurried on, wanting to get it all out while she was still following along. So every night, he said, I make sure I dream. I dream that dream. The one where I relive the kidnapping. Over and over. I go back through it. I search for details. I look for anything that I might have missed at the time. Or anything I might have seen but stuffed away because I couldn't deal with it. Mike paused. He studied Vanessa's face. It was impossible to read. I've tried explaining this to a couple of people, Mike said, and this is the point where they told me I was crazy. Mike waited, and because he was still watching Vanessa's face, he saw the instant it transitioned. He'd seen this alteration before. It was unmistakable. The narrowing of the eyes, the stiffening of her mouth, the slight spasm of the muscles along her jawline. The woman sitting next to Mike was no longer the warm and supportive friend she'd felt like when he'd started talking. She was back in cop mode. No, Mike thought. It wasn't cop mode. It was something else. Mike watched, mesmerized, as Vanessa's irises deepened noticeably in hue. They were from their usual soft, almost grayish blue to a deeper indigo. The color shift was so pronounced that it almost looked computer generated. It was also enormously disquieting. Mike felt like he was watching a human turn into. I know what crazy looks like, Mike, Vanessa said. Her voice was comfortingly human. Hard, but human. What you're saying, that isn't it. She shook her head, and her gaze drifted past Mike's face. Her eyes widened, and her lower lip trembled, as if she was seeing. What? Not even close to crazy, Vanessa said. From a nearby gnarly old tree, which stretched in branches over the slowly moving storm water, a crow cawed. It flipped in swings and took off, dipping low in front of Mike and Vanessa and then soaring away. And just like that, Vanessa was relaxed again. She reached into her pocket and pulled out Mike's pills. So, these? Mike looked at the pills lying on Vanessa's palm. He shrugged. It's not easy finding your way back to the same place every night. It's taken years of practice and I still need help. The pills, he gestured at them, they help. So do other things. Familiar sounds, familiar sights. Vanessa smiled and nodded. Pining for fun, she quoted his poster. Visit Nebraska, Mike finished. He looked down, suddenly embarrassed. His embarrassment turned into surprise when Vanessa reached over and took his hand. Mike was so stunned that he almost he almost snatched his hand back. A reflexive movement. He was glad he didn't, though. Vanessa's hand was warm and soft. It felt heartening and very welcome. Very welcome. That's a better way of saying it. I'm sorry, Vanessa said. Pressure welled up behind Mike's eyes. He felt them begin to moisten. Clearing his throat, he turned to look down at the concrete trough, as if he was gazing at a gorgeous river instead of a mucky storm drainage system. And speaking of storms, Mike was battling one that was stirring up from within him, swirling like a forming hurricane over calm water. Years of regret and grief were blowing up inside of him, threatening to hit landfall and wreak havoc. Mike blinked away the tears that waited to spill down his cheeks. And then, just like that, the emotion was quelled. The storm blew through, or maybe Mike was just in the eye of it. Whichever. All he knew was that he now felt clear, determined. Mike turned to face Vanessa again. When he spoke, his voice was strong. I can't change what happened to Garrett, he said. He's gone. That's on me. But the guy who took him, he's still out there. I know he is. Vanessa let go of Mike's hand. And if you find him, then what? She cocked her head. Just a reminder, you're still talking to an officer of the law. Her words sounded like a challenge, but Mike caught the hint of a twinkle in her eye. He smiled. Well then, officer of the law, you kick his door down and throw him in prison, obviously. Hold on a second. That's not good. Shoot. That thing is turning off. But I have a feeling it's going to, turn itself on to the music channel if I don't press it fast enough. Hold on a second. Oh, no, I didn't. Wow, it's crazy. Alright, we're good. Moving on. There we go. Of course, Vanessa said. But, she shook her head. Not to burst your bubble, but I'm pretty sure I saw him in a dream won't hold up in court. Vanessa and Mike grinned at each other, and Mike felt something zing inside of him. It was a palpable, wow feeling that was much more intense than his casual appreciation of her beauty, and the zing felt like it was going both ways. The look Vanessa was giving Mike was one he hadn't ever seen before, not directed at him anyway. Her reciprocation of his feelings was so strong that he found himself leaning toward her. Yep. Mike X Vanessa moment number 1 right here. Well, technically number 2, but this one would probably be counted as a way to ship both characters. Vanessa's cheek flushed. She looked away from Mike. Your sister seems cool, Vanessa said. Is it just the two of you? And the moment was over. Okay! Mike nodded. Yeah. Our parents are gone. He hesitated. How much should he share? Vanessa had returned her gaze to Mike. His eyes had settled back into their usual soft blue. Encouraged, Mike kept going. Mom kind of went bonkers after Garrett was taken. She was gone. Not gone, but they called it catatonic depression. She wouldn't speak. barely moved, for a long time. When she came out of that, she just sort of went through the motions. This continued for even longer. She acted like a mom, but she wasn't the mom she used to be. When Mike paused, Vanessa didn't move. Her direct gaze pulled the rest of the miserable story out of him. Then she got pregnant, Mike went on, and suddenly I had my mom back. She was cheerful, energetic. She joked and laughed. The whole time she was expecting she was like that. I didn't know then. I found out after. She thought she was going to have a boy. In her mind, which was still broken even though she was acting normal, the baby would be another Garrett. Vanessa nodded, but her lips were twisted. In sympathy? But the baby was Abby, Mike continued. And instead of being happy about her baby girl, Mom lost it. Worse than the first time. She just kind of wasted away. We, our family, limped along like that for another 3 years or so. Then on my 18th birthday, Dad took off. Vanessa sucked in her breath. No, she whispered. Yeah, Mike said. I was already a screwed up mess. Hard to be a regular teen when you're driving around a semi-truck full of guilt. And even when Dad was there, he didn't do much parenting. Mom was AWOL, spent most of the time in bed. I took care of Abby pretty much from the time she was born. But once Dad was gone, it was all on me, even figuring out how to support her. Then Mom died. And that was it for me. No college, no nothing. Mike pressed his lips together, once again holding back tears. Vanessa put a hand on Mike's thigh. The warmth flipped his focus from bad memories to the good ones. You know, Mike said, when Parrot and I were kids, my mom and dad, they were like those perfect parents you see on old TV shows. Lots of fun. Gave me tons of attention. Family dinner every night. Mike bit his lip and lifted one shoulder in a half shrug. We even used to hold hands around the table and say grace. Vanessa squeezed Mike's thigh lightly. That actually sounds really nice, she said. Her words sounded genuine, and maybe a bit melancholy. Mike sighed. I always thought it was silly, until it was over. Vanessa looked down at the eddying sludge in the culvert below them. For a full minute she said nothing. Mike talked out, sat silently. The way it was with your parents before, Vanessa finally said. It sounds like you were happy. Mike nodded. And you and Abby, you still have each other, Vanessa went on. From where I sit, I'd say you're pretty lucky, college or not. Vanessa lightly bumped his knee with hers. Mike took that to mean she wasn't judging him for his bitterness. Mike smiled at her. Vanessa returned the smile and she gazed at him steadily. Vanessa's attentiveness drained the remaining tension from Mike's body. He felt more relaxed than he had in a long time. But then, once again, the blue in Vanessa's eyes got darker, and her focus, although still on Mike, blurred. He felt like she had drifted off in her mind. He sensed a startlingly strong disconnect. Something had cut the link that was forming between them. That something, Mike thought, hinted at a secret, something hidden in Vanessa's past, which she shared with him. The police radio clipped to the shoulder of Vanessa's uniform spat static. Vanessa tensed and glanced down at it. Did you always want to be a cop? Mike blurted. He wanted to jumpstart the personal connection with her again. Vanessa lifted her gaze to Mike's face. Yes, she said. Mike waited to see if she'd elaborate, but she didn't. Still, the one word had said enough. Mike was sure it contained a novelized story. Vanessa had reasons for wanting to be a cop. She wasn't, however, going to share them with him now. I always wanted to be a builder, Mike offered. A contractor. Maybe own a construction company. He blew out air. Maybe in another life. Vanessa didn't say anything. Mike felt awkward, like he was oversharing. I should go, Vanessa said. She brushed off her dark blue pants. Mike stood and similarly wiped out his jeans. Fragrant blades of grass and a few leaves spiraled around his legs and settled at his feet. Mike and Vanessa started walking back toward his house. Mike glanced at her. What about your report? He asked. Vanessa lifted her hand. She still held Mike's pill bottle. Mike tensed. But then Vanessa turned and tossed the pill bottle over her shoulder. It bounced down the concrete sides of the storm drain and landed in the dribble of gunk-brown water. It began tumbling away from them in slow motion, spinning around and around. Promise me one thing, Vanessa said. Mike looked at her. She was leaning toward him, her irises once again dark blue, her eyes squinting forcefully. Mike almost physically recoiled from the power of her gaze. What? He asked. No more sleeping, Vanessa said. When you're at Freddy's, you stay alert. Mike nodded, but he was glad he didn't have Pinocchio's nose. He was lying. He wasn't sure it was a promise he could keep. That is going to be, I will say, that is going to be the longest chapter of the night. The other pages are like, I think it was like somewhere between like 4 or 5 to 7 pages, page flips in between each chapter. I would know because I did that. Didn't really see. Hey, Lion Blade, how you doing tonight? Excuse me. Let's continue. Chapter 15. A couple hours after Vanessa left, Mike stood in his kitchen and watched the sky outside his window turn orange. For the 5th time, he redialed Max's number. When he put the phone to his ear, he heard the same thing he'd already heard 4 times. Hey, it's Maxine, Max's voice said. Leave a message, or don't. Mike sighed and dropped his phone. He glanced over at Abby. Already in her flannel PJs, pink with bright red stars all over, Abby was sitting on the sofa. She had Dolph tucked under one arm, and her drawing pad was on her lap. Of course she was drawing. The TV was on in the background, and of course she didn't seem to be paying any attention to it. Mike looked back outside again. The sky was still orange, and the orange color was getting deeper. He looked at his watch. He was running out of time. Where are you? Mike asked out loud as he dialed Max's number for the 6th time. Mike listened to Max's message once again. He heaved another louder sigh. He looked over at Abby. She lifted her head and met his gaze. Rubber crunching over loose rocks and broken gravel, engine lugging. Mike's old car coughed to a stop against the curb in front of Freddy's. Mike looked through his windshield at the old building. This is a very bad idea, he thought. When the sun had gone down, a thin fog had rolled down out of the hills at the edge of town. The moon, slightly larger tonight than the night before, still managed to deliver its shine, but that shine was smeared by the dense, moist air. The hazy moonlight on the pizzeria made the building look otherworldly. Mike's imagination turned the building into a big hand, just wanting to reach out and grab the car. Mike turned and looked at his sister, who sat primly upright in the back seat. Well, you know what? You know what? Just for the sake, just because I can, even though I know full well, this will probably give me a copyright claim, if not a strike, on top of that. And you know the funny thing is, they do have I've been seeing a couple of live streams of a channel or one or two channels doing a live stream playing the first and second seasons respectively of Goosebumps on the YouTube back to back. Without the intro theme though. But here we gotta play this. Because you said that. Could that be any louder though? I wish I could turn it down, but I can't. Also, I hope this does not wake up my family member. Because it is pretty loud, isn't it? Can I just say, one of my all-time favorite theme songs ever. I actually have a bit of history with that because I have a few of the books here. I've got, in case anybody's going to be asking, I got I've got Attack of the Mutant, The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, Bad Hair Day, The Barking Ghost. I feel like there's more there. I also do have a Give Yourself Goosebumps book, where it's titled "Check Out at the Dead End Hotel." If I were to do that, I would probably make it to where it'd be an interactive thing where, if there's a choice to it, yeah, if there's like a choice to it, I say, which one would you guys like, and we just make a poll out of it. That'd be really nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. Red fan made this. Oh, that's nice. But the reason why I was doing that was because Lion Blade said, quote, "Good, just been watching Goosebumps all day, the classic series, as far as Returns of Freddy's. Viewers beware, you're in for a scare. We haven't even reached the scary part yet!" Anyway. Be quiet, Guru. Nobody asked for your input. In case you guys don't know where that was from. That's Guru that's like my take on Guru from Dragon Ball Z. That's we haven't started the scary part yet. We had some scary on the last part, episode or two, but we're not quite there yet, but we're getting close to it. Anyway. Let's see. I'm going to read that paragraph again because I did read that. In the middle of reading the chat. Mike turned and looked at his sister, who sat primly upright in the back seat. Still in her PJs and still clutching Dolph, Abby was ensconced next to a large backpack, which Mike had stuffed with blankets for a hidey tent and a sleeping bag. Abby was looking eagerly at Freddy's. You would have thought they were outside of an amusement park. This isn't a vacation, Abs, Mike said. You're not here to have fun. Abby kept her gaze on the pizzeria. Okay. My Hero's Academia. Oh, My Hero. You mean, I know what you mean. For those about it who are going to try to correct him, first off, autocorrect can be an asshole sometimes. Second off, he's referring to My Hero Academia, and I've only seen the first. I think I've seen the first 2 episodes of that. I haven't seen any more of that. But I might give it an. I might watch some more of that, yeah. Mike deepened his voice, attempting to sound stern. I will work, he said. You will sleep. And under no circumstances are you to leave my office. Abby kept staring at Freddy's. Mike leaned over the seat and waved a hand in front of his sister's face. I need you to look at me and tell me you understand. Abby didn't shift her gaze. I understand, she said. Mike raised his voice. Abby! Finally, Abby looked at him. I understand. She managed to burden the word with 2 tones of attitude. Because that's what kids be like. They gotta give the adults some attitude for absolutely no reason whatsoever, other than the fact that they don't like being told what to do. That's pretty much it. How many of you guys think it's gonna... How many of you guys think I'm gonna get a copyright thing for playing that Goosebumps music? I would not be surprised if I do. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if I look at it right now and there it is. You know what? I'm actually gonna look real quick. Hold on. No. Not yet, but no. I would not. I would expect it after, if anything, but not right now. The heavy metal door clanged shut, as usual, after Mike ushered his sister inside the restaurant. As the bone-rattling clank stopped reverberating, Mike stared at the lobby in dismay. What happened? Abby asked. Mike's gaze hopped from the broken glass to the ragged holes in the drywall. He took in the bench's torn vinyl. He frowned at a stream of quarters that seemed to lead down the hallway. Mike adjusted the strap of the large backpack he had slung over his left shoulder. He looked down at his sister. Give me your hand. Surprisingly, she did so without hesitation. Mike began guiding her forward. He did his best to weave around the worst of the glass shards, but navigating Abby through the destruction was unnerving. He felt like he was leading his sister to her execution. It smells funny in here, Abby said as Mike deliberately put his body between hers and the archway to the dining room. One glance through the arch told Mike that the damage in that room was even worse than what he was seeing in the lobby. Not that the hallway was much better. Like the lobby, the hallway floor was carpeted in glass, and the trail of coins continued. Abby was right about the smell. Freddy's had never smelled great, but now its odors were even worse. The smell was pungent and made Mike's nostrils burn. Continuing to step carefully, Mike got Abby down the length of the hall. He ushered her into the office. Once there, he let go of Abby's hand and shut the door. Abby stepped forward and looked around, her eyes bright and curious. The office, strangely, appeared to be untouched by the vandals. All the electronic equipment was as it should be. Mike thought. Dismissing the mystery of why vandals hadn't destroyed the CCTV monitors, Mike turned his attention to getting Abby settled. He slipped the backpack off his shoulder. Help me make your hidey tent, Mike said to Abby. Abby, who had been inching toward the desk and the monitors, turned back toward Mike. She nodded. For the next few minutes, Mike and Abby worked together to form a hidey tent from the blankets, using the filing cabinets as tent posts. They unrolled her sleeping bag and Abby crawled inside of it. Once there, she snuggled into a ball on her side, doll firmly pressed against her chest. Mike crouched in on his heels in front of the makeshift tent flaps, was happy to see that Abby's lids were drooping. "Do you want me to turn off the lights?" he asked. Abby shook her head. Her lids fluttered even lower. "Good night," Mike said. Abby didn't respond. Her eyes had closed. Mike backed through the overlapping blankets. He started to let them fall together, but he paused when Abby spoke. "It's like we're camping," Abby said. Her voice was nearly whisper soft, groggy. Mike opened his mouth to respond, but he saw his sister's mouth drop open slightly. Her breathing slowed. Mike smiled and closed up the hidey tent. He exhaled softly, the concern that he was making a mistake bringing Abby to Freddy's, abating now that she was tucked in. "It's going to be okay," he thought. Mike straightened and crossed over to the desk. He checked the CCTV monitors, scanning all of the interior feeds. "Wow," he thought. "Someone really did do a number on the place." Mike frowned. He was sure he'd locked up the night of the storm, but he still felt guilty about what had happened. He glanced at the hidey tent. Pee-wee, childish snoring sounds were coming from within the overlapped blankets. Mike looked back at the monitors. He sighed. Vandalism cleanup wasn't in his job description, but he couldn't leave the place this way. He listened to Abby snoring for a few more seconds. Then he left the office, closing the door behind him. Looking at the closed door for a moment, Mike hesitated. She was safe in there, wasn't she? He shook off his willies. Sure she was. Mike took a step forward and cringed at the crunching glass beneath his feet. Step one, he decided, had to be sweeping up all the glass. Resolved, Mike strode down the hall. He ignored the crackling and tinkling sounds that his feet made as the shattered more glass and creaked errant quarters. Halfway down the hall, Mike stopped in front of the frosted glass fronted door of the supply closet. Opening the door, he reached in and up. He put his hand on the pull string that hung from the closet's single bulb. Then he hesitated. The closet wasn't covered by CCTV, and given the chaotic shambles in the rest of the pizzeria, he wasn't sure what he was going to find in here. Mike yanked on the pull string. The bulb came on, and Mike gazed at it. A perfectly ordinary collection of janitorial equipment, maybe it's a little jostled, but otherwise all seemed to be... Wait, what was that? Glancing at the open door, Mike noticed a few drops of red on the frosted glass, and a faint smear. Was that blood? Mike shrugged. Maybe one of the vandals cut themselves. Mike stepped forward and turned to his left. Instantly, he jumped back. "Oh, good grief," he said. What had startled him was the stupid balloon boy. Mike made a face at the grinning little bug-eyed doll. As Markiplier would say it, "We get it, balloon boy, you're a dick!" "How'd you get in here?" Mike asked the doll. Vandals with a sense of humor, he thought. Mike turned the boy's face toward the wall. Ignoring the little pit-a-pat of his nerve endings, why did the stupid doll get to him? Mike grabbed a push broom. He quickly turned around, tugged on the light's cord, and left the supply closet. He shut the door firmly behind him. For the next couple hours, Mike put his nose to the grindstone. Having been a janitor several times, Mike could handle the push broom like a pro. So the work, though not the most fun in the world, wasn't difficult. Starting in the hallway, Mike swept everything that littered the floor into a pile that he pushed against one side of the dining room. One side wall of the dining room. The pile included all of the glass in the hall and the lobby and all the coins that were strewn around. He was tempted to go through the pile and pull out the coins. It would be kind of like panning for gold, but he decided to deal with that later. Mike consolidated all of the dining room furniture, making another pile of broken chairs and tables. In an arcade area, he couldn't really do much with the destroyed game cabinets. All he could really do was more sweeping. The glass that littered the floor there joined the other glass in the dining room pile. When he was sweeping in front of the stage, Mike encountered a yellow puddle and a strong ammonia odor. Gross, Mike said. Pushing his broom ahead of him, Mike headed to the kitchen. When he passed through the service doors into the vast stainless steel domain, he sighed. This was going to be another big job. But Mike tackled it. Riding shelving units, returning pots and pans, dented but still usable, to their places, and sweeping up more broken shards that were thicker pieces of dinnerware, Mike got the kitchen back into semi-order. Then he returned to the task that had originally brought him in here. He filled a couple of buckets with warm, soapy water. Mike took the buckets to the stage and returned to the supply closet to get a mop and then head back to the stage again. He spent the next several minutes thoroughly cleaning the area at the base of the center stage. He even cleaned the past that area, wanting to be sure he didn't miss a single speck of what one vandal had left behind. Once Mike was done with that cleanup, he left the buckets where they were. He'd take care of them later. He was running out of steam and he still had a lot to do. Returning to the supply closet, Mike found a dustpan and a box of heavy-duty garbage bags. He then tackled the task of turning his pile of glass and debris into 4 tiny bags of vandal detritus. And he filtered out the coins. Not sure what to do with the pile of quarters, Mike put them in another bag. He took the overstuffed bags to the unloading dock, where he discovered how the vandals had gotten in. He found a broken padlock lying on the floor. A new one had already been installed on the outer door, and he saw that the back door to the kitchen was broken down. The break-in hadn't been Mike's fault at all. Finally, Mike retreated to the archway with the bag of coins and his mop and broom. He stopped there to survey his handiwork, and he wasn't fully unsatisfied with it. The room looked better than it had, and it was the best he could do at the moment. Mike took the mop and broom back to the supply closet. He stowed the bag of coins there, too. Then his shoulders and back yelling at him for all the physical labor he'd put them through. Mike returned to the office. Mike opened the office door slowly and he stepped softly as he entered. He looked toward the Heidi tent, and he was happy to hear Abby still quietly snoring away. He glanced up at the clock above the tent. It was almost 4 a.m. Mike looked at the desk chair. Briefly, he thought about the promise he'd made to Vanessa, but the chair beckoned, and he was wiped out. Mike gave in to his need for rest and the compulsion of his routine. He set up his cassette player and rested his gaze on his taped-together poster, and in seconds his eyes were closing and the pine trees were swaying in his mind. No pills needed. Honestly, after all that hard work, compared to how he was literally just watching the stuff, like how he didn't really, like how he's mainly just, it was all boring and nothing was really happening here. He didn't need to go to sleep, but this time I think he earned his rest. So we got 5 chapters left, 16 through 20. Let's do this. Chapter 16. Abby wasn't sure what woke her up. but something did. Sitting up, Abby rubbed her eyes and yawned. She listened, expecting to hear Mike moving around. When she didn't, she parted the overlapped blankets of the makeshift hidey tent. She grinned. Mike was totally zonked out on the office chair, his head lowered backward, his mouth hidden open. If you guys seen me stream sometimes, you would know this. That's what is going on there. Tucking Dolph under her arm, Abby stood. She tiptoed toward the desk. Mike, she whispered. Abby stepped forward and poked Mike lightly on the bicep. He snorted, but he didn't wake up. She grinned again, wider this time. Cool. Abby quickly ducked it back inside her hidey tent. Setting down Dolph, she dug inside her sleeping bag to get the overalls she'd stashed there. Micah thought she'd spend the night in her PJs, but she'd hoped she'd get the chance she had now, and she was prepared for it. We all know where this is going if you watch the movie. Abby quickly changed into a pale pink tee and pulled darker pink overalls over it. She stuffed her PJs into the sleeping bag and she tucked Dolph into the bag too. Then she stood. I'll be right back, Abby told her dead-to-the-world brother. Abby stepped over to the office door. She eased it open and she slipped out into the hallway. You know, her first mistake was wandering alone because, let's be honest here, who knows what could happen. You know, even if you know what we know now, if you've watched the movie, still, she shouldn't have done that out of precaution. Now, of course, she's 10 years old, and I know that 10-year-olds are going to be curious about certain things by this point still to this day. But still, you know. At the fringes of his consciousness, Mike thought he heard the soft click of a door closing. It was that a clipped-off chirp of one of the birds he could hear in the trees. A single bird chirped from a branch undulating in the breeze. The branch creaked and its leaves rustled. Abby stepped through the archway and surveyed the huge empty room that stretched out before her. No, not empty. Abby spotted a big pile of sad-looking tables and chairs. The shape of the pile reminded Abby of a sleeping bear. She hoped the table and chair bear was happy. Abby's gaze moved past the table and chair bear. On the other side of the room, wide stage curtains were closed over a long stage. She smiled and headed that way. Climbing up the short flight of stairs to the stage, Abby headed toward the middle of the curtains. When she got there, a thud sounded from behind the curtains. Then a clickety-clack. Hello? Abby called out. She parted the curtains and looked behind them. The stage was like this inside of a hidey tent in the middle of the night. Abby couldn't see a thing. I know you're back here, Abby said. You might as well come out. A burst of children's laughter crackled from the stage speakers. How fun, Abby thought, looking up at the speakers above her head. She giggled. Clever, she said, smiling. As if in response to Abby's comment, the grr of grinding metal and several thumping footsteps started coming Abby's way. Abby's smile wavered a little, but she was sure, well, pretty sure, everything was okay. The footsteps belonged to something really big. Maybe it wasn't what Abby thought it was. Abby took a step back, but she kept hold of her curtain. She strained to see into the backstage area. A lurching surge of movement, more footsteps. They made their edge shake under Abby's feet. Were coming toward Abby. And then Abby tilted her head back and gazed up, way, way up, into the big whites of a beast was a much more realistic real looking bear than the table and chair bear. There we go, finally got it. Drink, because I'm feeling a bit tired. Mike, feeling no need to run because there's no point, runs out of the thicket of trees at the edge of the road. The black car roars away, but Mike doesn't even glance at it. He's more interested in the blind boy, who is sitting by himself in the middle of the dirt and gravel road, his back to Mike. Mike moves toward the boy. I know who you are, he says. The boy ignores him. All of you, Mike goes on. You're those those kids. The ones who disappear. Mike stops a few feet in front of the boy, who is wearing a stick to draw something in the dirt. A long time ago, Mike said, I had a brother disappeared too. The stick stops moving. The boy's head lifts just a little. I don't know how it's possible that you can let me like this, Mike said. Inside my dream, but I have a belief that you're here to help. That you're here to help. The boy doesn't respond. Please, please, Mike Hayes, or Mike says, bending toward the boy. Help me remember the man who took my brother. Help me so he could never again again. I can't do it myself. I'm tired, but it's buried too deep. The boy buries his stick. He stands and faces Mike. In that flat towers, the boy speaks if we were ready to. Mike doesn't hesitate. Anything, he says. Anything you want. The little boy runs his spectrum nose with a single hand, leaving a mingle of dirt in the tip of it. His pale brown furrows, together as a twin. Um, that's, Here we go again with the tea. I tell you, man, I'm getting tired. Hmm. Alright. See here. Okay, I know where I am now. Alright. Mike moves toward the boy. I know who you are, he says. The boy ignores him. All of you, Mike goes on. You're those kids. The ones who disappeared. Mike stops a few feet in front of the boy, who is using a stick to draw something in his dirt. A long time ago, Mike says, I had a brother who disappeared too. The stick stops moving. The boy's head lifts, just a little. I don't know how it's possible that you can be here like this, Mike says, inside my dream. But I have to believe that you're here to help. The boy doesn't respond. Please, Mike says, bending toward the boy. Help me remember the man who took my brother. Help me so he never hurts another kid again. I can't do it by myself. I've tried, but it's buried too deep. The kid drops his stick. He stands and faces Mike. In flat tones, the boy speaks. If we show you, what will you give us? He asks. Mike doesn't hesitate. Anything, he says. Anything you want. The little boy rubs his upturned nose with a dirty hand, leaving a smudge of dirt on the tip of it. His pale brows furrow together as he twists his lips, clearly thinking hard. Mike waits, and then the boy vanishes. Mike dashes forward and stands where the boy just stood. He is frustrated, but he's also invigorated. The things are unfolding differently. The boy talked directly to him. He's making progress. Mike glances down at the dirt. He leans in and to look at what the boy drew. The drawing is a stick figure, but its shape is unmistakable. The boy drew a rabbit. Mike opened his eyes and rotated his stiff neck. He rubbed the sore muscles and looked around the dim, quiet office. Remembering that he wasn't here alone, Mike looked over at the Heidi's tent. He erupted to his feet. The office chair skidded backward and slammed into the credenza. The tent was wide open. The sleeping bag inside of it was empty. Mike immediately charged toward the closed office door. Before he got halfway to it, a high-pitched scream stopped him in his tracks. Mike's heart went from 0 to infinity in a nanosecond. He spun around and rushed to the CCTV monitors. Scanning them quickly, his eyes nearly shot out of his head and ping-ponged around the room. Abby, Mike gasped. He took off, pell-mell, toward the dining room. How could I be so stupid? Mike asked himself as he barreled down the hall. It was Garrett all over again. Abby! Mike shouted as he burst through the archway and charged into the dining room. Mike's intestines felt like they were reaching up inside of him to strangle his lungs as he blasted through the room. He kept his gaze, his horrified gaze, on the massive jumble of animatronics that were writhing in front of the main stage. Abby's screams were coming from within that snarl of metal and rotting fur. What were those things doing to her? Stop! Mike screamed. Stop it! Let her go! Racing past a pile of furniture, Mike grabbed a broken chair. It was the only weapon available to him. As Mike raised the chair over his head, poised to strike, one of the metal and fur mounds wrapped around Abby broke free of the melee. It was Freddy. The gargantuan bear charged straight toward Mike. Mike's breathing choked in his throat. He wanted to turn and run, but he couldn't. He had to save his sister. Mike tightened his grip on his makeshift weapon. He braced his first feet on the linoleum floor. Freddy came closer and closer and closer, and he stopped a few inches from Mike. Mike held his teeth. Gears grinding, eyes flashing in obvious anger. The animatronic bear leaned down and pulled his face right in front of Mike's. The bear's searched and dusty black nose nearly touched Mike's nose. Mike closed his eyes and screwed it up again, his face up to swinging chart. Then, even though he wasn't going to help him, but at all. Mike! Abby called out. Everybody have a good night, man. We're not lemonade. Alright, well, everybody, I appreciate you for stopping by, and I hope you have a good rest of your night. Let's see. Mike closed his eyes and screwed up his face. He started to swing the chair even though he knew it wasn't going to help him at all. Mike! Abby called out. You're here! Mike opened his eyes and watched in disbelief as his sister, who was just fine, skipped toward him and the bear. She let out a carefree laugh, and then she gave the robotic creature a big hug. Mike gaped at his sister. They wouldn't stop tickling me, Mike, Abby said. I thought I was going to die. Seriously? Tickling? Mike lowered his arm. The chair hit the floor with a clatter. What the heck was going on? Mike struggled to compute the situation, to put it in some comprehensible box. Then he couldn't do it. Freddy? Freddy! Wait, hold on. Freddy? Abby said. This is my brother, Mike. He works here. Freddy raised his head away from Mike's face, just a little. Mike didn't move a muscle. His intestines eased up on his lungs infinitesimally. The animatronic's eyes were still very bright, but the incandescence didn't give off the same signal. The rage Mike had left viscerally coming from the bear was going away, and it seemed somewhat to be cautious cursory. Freddy straightened but kept he kept studying Mike. He scanned Mike from the head to toe. Mike had hoped he'd sensed muster. Abby, Mike said quietly as if he stood in front of the wild animal. Actually, the wild animal might have been called an improvement on the situation. Are you okay? Yeah. Mike, Abby said, This is Cora, Brimson Johnson. She spoke to me over the phone. Every day this is Mia. One by one, fans and more are coming to deeply support the animatronic that rained pairs of okay. Mike, Abby said, this is Chicago Bonnie and Foxy. She dated the animatronics to her oils. See, you're sorry about that. Mike, Abby said, this is Cheetah, Bonnie in Froze Country. She turned to the animatronics. Yes, this is Mike. Yes, this is Mike. One by one, the two. Let's see here. One by one, and more than a bit shiny animatronics. The film trigger pads that waved at home, acted from school signs and Mike started to lift his hand for a return wave. He immediately realized what he was doing and he loved his arm. In spite of the animatronic's apparent friendliness, Mike's self-preservation system backed him up a step. When it did, Mike nearly bumped into Freddy, who was lumbering back to rejoin the others. Mia looked to the furry side to his brother. This is a joke, right? He asked his sister. Mike found his animatronics. Every one of these had broken parts exposed in an accommodated wedding ring, a clearly combined genre and gears. How would you see these things moving around? Mike started to lift his head for a rerun waiver. He unintentionally realized what he's doing. Alright. Mike lowered as he spun in the circle. How dangerous but the creepy room is terrifying except for Abby and the in the animatronics. Yeah, right. Let's see. Trying to find my spot again. Here we go. The room drew Mike's words from back at him. Otherwise, silence TV Mike ring tried again. Hello! That too seemed after having to bounce off of the dining room ceiling. Return to masquerade. There's nothing beneath me. Let's see. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, for slowing down so much. Yeah, I apologize. That too, after seeing a bunch of the dining room ceiling return to life, he genuinely was remade by his. Uh, yeah, that's weird. All right. That too, after seeming to bounce off the dining room ceiling into the light. He ground his teeth and looked at the animatronics. There's no way, he said. It's not possible. Let's see here. That too, after seeming to bounce off the dining room ceiling, returned to Max. Uh, say I know where I'm at now. Man, Jesus cow. There's no way, Mike muttered. It's not possible. Mike thought Abby take his hand. He looked down. Give me another drink of tea. Give me a second. Oh, I got some pop here too. How cold is it now? Because it was cold when I got it in here, but I don't know how cold it is right now. Let's try it. I am going to need to put that in the fridge. Because that is warm. I'll be right back. Give me a minute. Yeah, I'll be right back, guys. Just give me a minute. Alright, I'm back. I have returned. Let's go ahead and just keep on with this. Alright. Alright. Mike started to lift his hand for a return wave. He immediately realized what he was doing, and he lowered his arm. In spite of the animatronic's apparent friendliness, Mike's self-preservation system had backed him up a step. When it did, Mike nearly bumped into Freddy, who was lumbering back to rejoin the others. Mike looked from the furry robots to his sister. "This is a joke, right?" he asked his sister. Mike frowned at the animatronics. Every one of them had broken parts, exposed and unconnected wiring, and clearly crushed gears. How were these things moving around? Sure, the animatronics were jerky and cumbersome, but they were functional. How's that possible? Mike looked around. "Someone else is here, right?" he said. He raised his voice. Someone's controlling them? Someone didn't step forward to take credit. Was it Vanessa? Mike wondered. Who else did he know who might be able to do this? Annoyed, Mike shouted, "Very funny! You got us! Congratulations!" Mike cowered as he spun in the circle. He saw nothing but the empty room. Empty, that is, except for him and Abby and the moving animatronics. You hear me? Wait. You hear me? Mike bellowed. The joke's over! You can come out now! The room threw Mike's words back at him. Otherwise, silence. Mike tried again. Hello! That, too, after seeming to bounce off the dining room ceiling, returned to Mike. He ground his teeth and looked at the animatronics. There's no way, Mike muttered. It's not possible. Mike felt Abby take his hand. He looked down. For once, Mike felt their roles reversing. Mike was the kid, a very dumbstruck kid, and Abby was the knowing adult. It's okay, Mike, Abby said. Her voice was low and even, as if she was talking to a scared kitten. Mike frowned at Abby. Then he looked from one animatronic to the next. Since his intestines had settled back to where they belonged, and his lungs were giving him some more air, Mike really looked at the creatures in front of him. Top hat, bib, bunny ears, pirate's book. These were the kids from his dream. The truth hit Mike like a battering ram between the eyes. Whatever was happening with the animatronic was supernatural. Mike's voice cracked when he uttered in a low tones. Hear them. Beep, beep, beep. At first, Mike thought the sound was coming from inside his brain. A sort of ding, 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 a realization. Then he came to his senses. He looked at his watch. His alarm was going off. He silenced it. Abby frowned at Mike's watch. Do we have to go home now? She asked. Mike looked at the animatronics. I think that's probably a good idea, he said. Abby nodded, her smile gone. She was clearly let down, but she didn't argue. Mike started to pull Abby toward the lobby. She freed her hand from his grip. Hang on, she said. Abby pulled her drawing pad from the pocket of her bright pink overalls and she dropped to a cross-legged position on the floor. She began scribbling away with one of her colored pencils. Abby, Mike said. One sec, she said. I'm almost done. It was more than 1 second, but it wasn't more than 20 or so. Abby popped to her feet and tore off the paper she'd been drawing on. She's skipping over to the blue bunny. She handed it to him. The bunny, Bonnie, took the paper from Abby delicately, as if it was the most precious thing in the world. He held up the paper so the other animatronics could see it. Mike took a step to his left so he could see it too. Mike's chest tightened with an emotion he couldn't quite quantify. Was he touched? Worried? Freaked out? Abby had drawn a red heart on the paper. I had a lot of fun tonight, Abby told the animatronics. Thank you for playing with me. Before Mike could stop her, Abby rushed forward. She threw herself at the animatronics and they all folded their arms around her. Every muscle in Mike's body went taut, like a bow drawn back, ready to fire. Immediately he relaxed, though, when he realized the intimidating robots were just giving Abby a goodbye hug. Mike was tempted to pinch himself to see if he was in a dream. Not his usual dream, but a dream nonetheless. The scene was as nonsensical as a dream, but Mike knew it wasn't one. He really was watching a bunch of mottled old jumbo-sized robot animals hunting his little sister. The spectacle was both tender and terrifying. Hmm. So I'll tell you what we're gonna do. I'm actually gonna go ahead, since this is the end of the second night for him, technically speaking. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and stop it here. And then tomorrow afternoon, I will read chapters 17 through 20. And then tomorrow night, I'll read 21 through 25. Which 25 would technically be the epilogue. But I still count the epilogue as a chapter in itself. So yeah, so that's probably what I'll do. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching. I know it was slow in the middle of the stream because I was starting to get a little bit tired, but yeah, but that tea kind of helped. But right now, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream here, just in case the tiredness comes back, you know. So yeah, but before I end it, one more time for this stream specifically. I am doing a community poll to determine which book I will read first to start the Halloween season. The 4 books, for those who don't know, are Fantastic Land by Mike Bakoven, and Psycho by Robert Bloch. By Robert Bloch. Both of these books having 0 votes the last time I checked when I went to see the poll. For the books that do have votes with them, we have Peter Benchley's Jaws, which has 1 vote at the time of this recording, from what I last checked. And but in first place with 3 votes at the time, now it probably has changed some, Stephen King's Night Shift. Yeah, so that's the book that's getting first. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. But for right now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna do it. But like I said, that's gonna be it. Hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Forrest Walpole.